This time on AutoEdits Jeep, it's the big brake conversion kit from PowerStop. Let's get after this thing. Howdy guys, Jeep and Jason here, and today I'm going to show you this new kit from my buddies at PowerStop Brakes. Now you know that both the Jeep and the truck have the PowerStop Z36 truck and tow brake kits on them, and this is an exciting new piece because it's the new big brake conversion for the Jeep JK. Now I'm really excited about this because I'm actually happy with the standard Z36 pad and rotor combo that I have on the Jeep, but now I'm gonna go and put the big brake kit, which is basically a remanufactured Caliper, but what they've done is they've come up with a new, now this is another really kind of cool aspect of this. Look at this packaging. This is when you know a company cares. And this is because I actually just talked to the guys at the SEMA show in Vegas just a few weeks ago, and they were really proud of this right here. So they really care about the product and us, the end consumer, the Jeepers. These guys are Jeepers right here. Rodion, Chris, thanks guys. Look at this. They told me about the fight to get this done. Look at this presentation. Now this has a very high-end feel, and that's because this isn't a budget big brake conversion kit. This is strategically priced. It's competitive in the market, but I like it because it has the Z36. These right here are the star of the show. The Z36 pads, the carbon fiber ceramic pads are just amazing. Now you just get to add to that this kind of, of course, in the truck, if you guys watched, I put the red powder coat calipers on, and even though these are just remanufactured stock style calipers, they seem to work better. I think it's the red. It's like, I think it adds another 15 horsepower too. So what you're essentially doing is just adding much more leverage to your stock style calipers onto a 20% larger rotor. Now there's a couple of different options when you order this kit. You can order it with the stock length steel braided brake lines, extended steel braided brake lines, or like I did with no brake lines, because I have some extended steel braided brake lines from when I put my lift kit on. But look for that. I'll put it in my Amazon storefront with those different options, so be careful when you look through there. But that's kind of a nice value or nice option to have there, so you can have those different options and the prices adjust accordingly. So let's get the tires off. Now here's a quick little tip that I've found. I've been very happy with the Milestar Patagonia tires, and what I've been doing is rotating them very regularly. So every 4,000 to 5,000 miles, it just so happens I'm doing something to the Jeep, so I rotate them, and they've been wearing perfectly. So they look and are lasting actually better than I expected. So that's a quick tip on tire management.
Pinto standing guard, watching the neighborhood. If any of you guys are curious, there is the Mustang. In case you're the Jeep people, never watch those videos. There's the truck, of course, and the Jeep in the garage. It's a big deal for me.
Now in the front here, if you guys will notice that the knuckle is red. It's not a Reed's Racing knuckle. I just did that when I replaced the ball joints like 6 or 7 months ago, and I just have that obsessive nature where I cleaned them and I thought, oh, I have some red paint left that I had been in my cabinet for 100 years, so I finished it up. They're just red, stock knuckles. So now what I'm gonna do to get started on this brake swap is, since the kit here comes with a fairly complete, not fairly complete, a very complete set of new rubber boots. You have all of your bolts and sliding bolts and stainless steel hardware and some grease. It even comes with Loctite. That's really, really cool. The kit is just super complete. Really love the thought put into this and the display of it. So what I'm gonna do first is just take the brake line, break it loose now, and then transfer that over to the new caliper with my new washers here. Hi, Pinto. And we'll torque that down in a minute, but for now, we'll just get that tight so it just stops the bleeding for the moment. And then get that hung out of the way. And that way we'll make the mess now. All right, so now we're gonna just try to get this whole thing off as one unit because we don't need any of this other stuff. And then we could just use our fancy dancy Craftsman Impact to get these the rest of the way off. Uno. Dos. Break off, so then you can just see that makes that nice to just get this off as one chunk. And we'll put that aside over here. And then rotor comes off. The cross-drilled and slotted rotors are wearing fantastic. This is, gosh, a couple years old, and I drive this thing hard. I pretend like it's a rally car sometimes. I know you shouldn't, it's a Jeep, but hey, I'm having fun. So these things are holding up great. Zero complaints with those things. As you guys know me, I will take a moment to just kind of clean this stuff off. One of the other things that I could really sing the praises of the Z36 pads is that they just don't leave a lot of residue on, a lot of brake dust on your wheels. And that's just been something I've really appreciated because a lot of us drive these things as daily drivers in traffic, and that's where you just get that kind of, where's the wheel? Oh, they're over there. But that dark dust on your wheel, these don't do that, and I really do like that about them. All right, so first up, make sure your hands are clean, and then you're gonna wanna put your fancy new bigger rotor on. Now, this is pretty cool. Let me give you a quick tip here on how to keep everything situated while you do your install. I just take some old open lug nuts and just tighten them down, and then that will just keep everything in place while you do your work. That way you don't have your caliper wobbling around. I'm gonna go ahead and put 2 on so it'll keep it kind of centered. Let's get this other rotor in place and show you the difference. Pretty substantial. So this also goes to show you that you're not going to be able to use this with anything smaller than a 17-inch wheel. And you should even double check that just to make sure. I'm using the Manx, the Vision Manx beadlocks. So there you go. That's a pretty cool comparison, direct comparison. Now let's get our handy dandy bolts out of our packaging down here. Let's get some of the Loctite that this kit even comes with, and we'll get these in place. So we'll put this here. Get that started. Loctite on both of these. Get this one started. All right, so now we got those started. You want to torque these down to 120 foot-pounds. So these bolts are the ones that actually slide into the caliper mounting adapter, and that allows the caliper to move to adjust to the rotor. So for these bolts, I always put, it's good to put a little bit of high temp grease in there. Not too much, but just enough, and it has to be high temp grease because obviously these are gonna see serious temperatures. And then grab your boot, and you will get your boot down there in place. Get that boot seated on that side, on the bracket side, and then get the boot seated on the bolt flange side, and repeat for this one. And that is a good solid feel in there. I'll go ahead and clean the bolt off on both sides and the boot. All right, now this part I like to do without my gloves because you're going to take your stainless steel inserts here, and it's time to put those inside the caliper or inside the caliper adapter. All right. There we go. You can actually hear the very positive snap of that going into place. All right, now it's time to put your pads on. And this is where you actually lube up just these little tabs here. And that's the part that actually moves along the actual stainless steel sliders here. And that's the special grease here. I'm gonna show you that on this camera as well. And this grease has some sort of magic unicorn farts in it. And this is the one you want to use for here and not get it on the pads. So then we'll get that started down there. There we go. So basically what you're doing is this grease right here will help prevent any of the chatter or some of this noise that you would associate with your brakes. And this just alleviates that. So just you grease some of these things when you put them in. Now, what we'll do is we'll get our new powder coated caliper ready to go into place. And that, before you put that on, you'll go ahead and put a little bit more of that fancy grease anywhere that the pads touch this thing. And so that means on the piston here, I put a little bit there. I've had very good luck doing this way. So just put it there, and then you put it here on the outside of the caliper. Try not to get it everywhere. And this way, everywhere that a pad is touching, that moves, that has an opportunity to chatter or make some sort of noise, you're helping to lubricate or negate that by putting some sort of material here to help that quiet that down. This now should go right into place. We'll put our bolt in place there. Likewise down here, and we'll finger tight these. And then these get tightened to 26 foot-pounds, which is not tight. There we go. Voila. So there you have it. Pretty straightforward on the replacement and install of these things. I'm going to go ahead and get the other ones installed, and then I'm going to run through the bleeding process with you guys. Now, before I go through a quick run through of the bleeding process, I feel it's important to kind of just prep you for this. This is not a beginner's job. It's something that's very important. It's not a hard task to do technically. It's just something you have to pay attention to, understand what you're doing, and let's get started with this. This is probably the most important thing to keep your attention or your mind on. This is the brake master cylinder and the fluid reservoir for that. Now this is where obviously the brake fluid is stored that feeds the vehicle. And what you'll want to do when you bleed and fill all of the new calipers up is to just make sure this is never empty or sucks air into here, because if it does, it's a nightmare to get it bled. Matter of fact, you may need to take it to a professional and have a scan tool where they can actually run the anti-lock brake pump to help purge air out of the system. So pay attention so you don't need to do that. Make sure this has always got fluid in it. So do one caliper, check the fluid. Do the next caliper, check the fluid. Just always come back up here. Then, on that note, get a bottle of DOT3 brake fluid. I just use good old-fashioned Napa generic brand. And right now is not a time to mix synthetic. So if you get there and you see the 1,000 brake fluids up on the counter, just get regular standard brake DOT3 brake fluid. That's what this system needs. So that's what I recommend. Pay attention up here. I, out of habit, just tend to leave the cap on loose while I'm working on the system. That way, if there's any, when you press the pedal or pump, if there's any bit of bubbles or splash, it keeps the splash from leaking out all over in here. So there you go. Keep an eye on your brake fluid reservoir. All right, before we get this thing bleeding, let me show you the comparison and give you an idea. You know, it's not a massive change, but it is a change. I think they say it's about 20% larger rotors, and so you have that extra leverage on the rotating mass here to slow it down. Size-wise, it looks good. I like the red on the caliper. The shippers did figure out a way to just huck this box around and give us a few chips in these things, but overall, home run on that. So let's go into the bleeding process. Now, what I do when I'm going solo on a bleeding, I usually have a hand vacuum pump, and that just I attach that to this. Buy one of those from any auto parts store, because the reason you want that is that it comes with some hoses like this and some little adapters that fit on the actual bleeder valve here, so you can actually attach a hose. It's easier than having a coffee can. I've done that for years, and just fuel line or whatever hose you get. All right, now, so this is a technique that I use that I've learned over the years, and especially when I'm working solo, this is really, it takes some patience, but it has worked really well for me. I do what I call a gravity bleed or a gravity fill first, and so I get everything installed, it's all solid, and then I just open the bleed valve and I just let it sit and let the gravity push the fluid through the line, because you have your master cylinders full. The fluid is technically up still pretty solid up until this area, because we only opened it right here to install this thing. And then you let it just kind of go, and it will fill the fluid. And you can walk away, go do something. Don't lose sight of this, because what I do is sometimes I don't use this little tube right here and let it just drip into my little pan. I have a little pan down there. And then what that will do is that will just gently fill this cylinder here with brake fluid up to the top, and it's been very, very close. We'll find out here in a second. I'm gonna have my wife we're gonna do it old school and just have her pump the brakes, and I'll show you that technique, because I feel it's important. If I'm gonna suggest to you an upgrade where you have to bleed your brakes, I'm gonna show you the basic principles of this, and that's what we're doing here. So this, just let it fill until it just kind of drips out of here. And I may have to take this tube off. An easy way to tell is right here, is you can actually see. Now, another thing, I used up all my gloves last night because I was trying to finish before the rain, and so I'm out of gloves. So wear gloves. It's probably bad to have brake fluid on your bare skin, and it's the worst fluid of all of them. Share in the comments if you guys agree it's the worst. Anyway, so now you could actually see it's just dripping, just gently dripping out of there. And there you go. I always just out of habit, give it a few taps. If there's any air bubbles stuck to the walls of the caliper, knocks them loose. So now that is full. We know that we have fluid, solid fluid into here, and there's only a tiny bit to bleed out of this thing. We're golden. You do that all 4 around, and then it'll be time to actually pump and bleed the rest of this thing, the rest out of that thing. But there you go. And then just wipe this clean. And now you know you have fluid all the way full into this caliper. All right, now it's time for an old-fashioned bleed. Now, since my wife's home, thank you, honey, we are gonna do it where I'm just gonna have her pump the pedal, and I'll show you guys the traditional 2-person brake bleed. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my little container or connector onto the end there, use my 10mm, and all right, honey, pump it 3 times and hold.
Holding.
and then you open it and crack it, and you look for, see those little air bubbles coming out, and then, and pump it 3 times and hold.
Holding.
All right. Not bad. Okay, pump it 3 times and hold.
Holding.
Not that much air came out of that. If you guys notice that kind of gravity fill really does a number on that. So that's why I take my time and do that. Go ahead and pump it and tell me how the pedal feels.
It feels good.
Let's do it one more time just for good measure, just because got the cameras on. And go ahead and pump 3 times and hold.
Holding.
A little bit more air, 3 times and hold.
Holding.
Okay. All right, pump it, and how's it feel?
It feels solid.
Feels solid. There you go. That's the basics of the brake bleed, and you'll do that times the rest of the corners of the vehicle. So over there, backs first generally, and then move to the fronts. And then you drop your wrench into your brake fluid pan. Let's see what it drives like. So right off the bat, I'm going to tell you to make sure to follow the procedure on how to bed your brakes or seat your brake pads to your rotors. I did that in another video. I'm not going to bore you guys with that again. Go watch that video. I'll put a link to it right here. And that'll give you an idea of that part of the process. And it's actually a really important part of the process for the PowerStop pads, because the Z36 carbon fiber ceramic pads, actually, when you do that process, they transfer material to your rotors, and then that combination of material on the rotors and your pads create a very, very effective braking surface. So don't forget to really pay attention and do the seating in process. I would say my one caveat is, in my video that I showed you guys, I was pretty aggressive on that first round of the first series of 5 stops. Ease up on that. Just don't be quite so aggressive. I took it a little bit easier on this one, and it actually feels a little bit better. They seem happier this way. So don't go so aggressive, but do it right and make sure that you get them nice and warm so it transfers material over. But right off the bat, I can just tell you, from driving around here, I'm just doing some, now that everything's cooled down, I'm doing some sporty stopping. And man, I tell you, it's wet out. This is actually going to be really good. You can kind of see it's just sprinkling and drizzling again. I've been dodging this rainstorm here in SoCal. But what I'm finding is that the pedal feel is actually really, it's an interesting thing to get used to. It's taking much less pedal to do actually more braking than I used to get on a normal driving basis. So you actually have to get used to applying less pedal for the same amount of stopping. I'm really, really happy with this so far. This is a great upgrade. Let's do another one. Real aggressive stop. We're going 50 and on the brakes, anti-locks, kicking in and to a stop. Boom. Straight as can be. Man, this is great. Phenomenal. Very happy with this upgrade. Now, here's my recommendation. Do you need this upgrade for your Jeep? You know, I don't think so. My Z36 pads and rotors package was adequate. But do you want this? Yes, 100% you want this upgrade, because I now have a vehicle that isn't just adequate or it stops and it feels like normal in traffic. I actually go, this is move the needle back into feeling quite sporty or aggressive in the braking field. All right, so there you go, another great upgrade to the Jeep. Am I thrilled? Yeah, this was a good one. Just in time for another rainstorm, and now I have a little bit more confidence out on the road in this thing. It's a good one. So you know the drill. Please go over to AutoEdits Jason on Instagram, follow me there, or please just support the channel and subscribe and like this video. Until next time, enjoy your drive. I got some driving to do myself.